Okay, gather round. It's confession time. Come on, kids. Come in from outside. And don't forget, if you miss any of the confessions, there is one place where you could go to catch up.
Of course, the Greatest Hits Radio app, and you can find Simon Mayo's Daily Confession podcast.
It's so easy.
So simple.
So straightforward. Today's smart speaker is given to Alan, not his real name. And you know those confessions where I'm reading them and you go, oh, God, where is this going?
Okay, is this one of those?
No, it's not.
Oh, right.
Okay.
This is not one of them. Dear Saintly Simon, Holy Holly and Almighty Matt, this confession dates back to the summer of 1983 when my brother and I were not even 10. My sister was just 16. My mother had made plans to go away for 4 days. 4 days? Leaving my sister in charge of us boys. Worried that we'd trashed the place in her absence, my mother thought it would be a good idea to give us a job to do. We could work together as a team, bond, and thus keep ourselves out of trouble. She bought a large tin of pink paint, 3 brushes.
Okay.
3 brushes and asked us all to paint the main wall in her bedroom behind her bed. An easy job to keep us out of mischief, and said, don't get paint on the carpet, and then off she went.
Unbelievable. Right, okay.
Problem was, Father Simon, we figured this painting job would take days. And all we wanted to do, as Sheryl Crow would say, was to go out and have some fun. My sister even planned to spend the entire time at her boyfriend's house, which was fine by us. Anyway, I came up with a plan. In those days, my mother had an ancient, industrial-sized vacuum cleaner. It was very powerful, with a noisy motor, and it had a useful suck and blow facility.
Oh, no.
We all hated this machine. It sounded like a high-powered lawnmower and weighed a ton. My mother loved it and would often hoover early on a Sunday morning, deliberately waking up the entire house. I came up with the idea that if we filled the drum of this machine
Of course.
with the pink paint
Yep.
and put it on blow mode, we could simply spray the paint onto the walls and then just touch up the sides and edges with the brushes.
Be fine, yeah.
We would have the whole job done in an hour.
Yep.
What could possibly go wrong? For some reason and without question, we all agreed this was the best plan. I set about carefully pouring the 10 litres of bright pink paint into the drum before securing the heavy motor back on top with the big metal clips. My sister took hold of the nozzle with both hands, and in the stance of a highly trained firefighter, she stood legs apart, leaning back slightly, ready for action. I told her that as soon as I turned it on, she should gently spray from side to side.
Gently.
You know, to get an equal covering of paint on the wall.
Make sure of that.
A short countdown, and then I pressed on. Press the button. Oh my. What can I say, Father Simon? At a speed of around 100 miles per hour, the paint in the drum came out with such force, my sister never stood a chance and she lost control. The nozzle snaked violently around the entire room for what felt like an eternity, spraying thick, bright pink paint into every corner. There was not a single thing in the room that didn't get a covering. Turn it off! Turn it off! My sister shouted. But it was all too quick. Within about 10 seconds, the paint ran out and the machine died a death. Thick smoke bellowing from the top. We all stood there in total shock. We were all pink from head to toe, too scared to laugh, too scared to cry. Barbie would have been proud. My mum was going to go ballistic. She told us not to get paint on the carpet. Well, now look at it. As you can imagine, any attempt by us kids to clear it up was totally futile. We just smeared paint around. We decided to just close the bedroom door.
Yeah, that'll be fine. Yeah.
My sister hid at her boyfriend's house, and we waited for World War III to begin when Mum got home. It was a very long weekend. Well, Father Simon, needless to say, when she did arrive home to the scene of utter destruction, albeit in a nice shade of pink, she hit the proverbial roof, which also was pink, by the way.
I'll bet.
My brother and I frantically pointed the finger of blame at my sister, as she was the grown-up after all, age 16. She really should have known better, don't you think, mother dearest? So, Simon, I wish to seek forgiveness, mainly because says Alan. It was all my idea. But my sister did indeed take the blame, and was grounded for quite some time after that. And as a result, her boyfriend found someone else to go out with. Thankfully, my brother and I got off scot-free. Thank you, boys. Oh, and sorry to my mother for destroying her bedroom. Thank you, Father Simon, and keep up the forgiveness. It has a certain cartoon quality to this, but I've never heard of an industrial Hoover like that, which would do suck and blow. Anyway, you certainly shouldn't fill it up with pink paint.
No.
Sister Holly.
Absolutely not. No, I mean, the thing is, mums do so much for us. They're just fantastic, really. I think they're just the best. They're just always there. And then you ruined her bedroom. Ruined it with all the pink paint going everywhere. And you broke her favourite vacuum cleaner.
Yes.
I mean, really, very, very bad. I know you were very young, but it was a stupid idea and you should have known better. So not forgiving.
Brother from another gutter.
You know, I'd be minded not to forgive just because, well, I don't see why Big Sister gets A, all the blame, and B is getting dumped. Why is she getting dumped by your man just because of what happened with the paint?
She's grounded.
I mean, it's not on at all, really. Also, why is Mum deciding, oh yeah, I'm going to leave you with one job, which involves paint and my bedroom, and thinks that's a great idea for these
away for 4 days.
kids? I mean, what's going on there? Also, what is it about vacuum cleaners that got a blow function? The problem there is the system. It's the system that's at fault, nobody else. And for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
Okay, people's verdict, please split in the studio as ever. What do you say to Alan? Forgiveness or not, please, on the people's verdict? On the text, 61054, first word is Simon. The people's verdict is incoming. Meantime, the people's verdict is in on tonight's confession, which came from Alan. He and his brother were under 10, sister was 16. They were left on their own for 4 days. Mother says, can you paint my bedroom, please? And here's some pink paint. So they poured it, obviously, into an industrial Hoover and set it to its blow feature, something that I don't think many Hoovers have. Anyway, the result was chaotic, and the verdict is in like this.
Forgiven, says Jerry. I'm with Brother Matt on this one. Leaving children to paint a room is a recipe for disaster. What did Mum actually think was going to happen? Debbie and Erdry, I've never laughed so much. All forgiven, as why would you leave kids unattended with a bucket of paint? The 16-year-old sister should have known better, but I can see that the boys would have been wee devils talking her into it. A bit unfair that she got the full blame, to be fair. And finally, Joshua says, forgiven. If you think about it, he was the first person to invent the paint spraying machine.
Yes, although it was pretty catastrophic at the time. Alan, thank you for... Not his real name, obviously.
No, never is.
Thank you for the confession. And if you have... So he gets the smart speaker. If you have one and you fancy a swap, send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Today's confession comes from Abby. Thank you, Abby. Smart speaker for you. Father Simon, happy young Holly and forgiving class warrior Matt.
Correct.
In the early 1990s, I was employed at a high school in Greater Manchester. I worked as a special education teacher at the time. The head teacher of the school decided that the teachers didn't have enough to do and arranged an end-of-term talent competition. All of the departments had to participate. The competition was fierce. My particular cohort of pupils were of the challenging variety. Their main talents involved swearing, smoking and skiving, and I didn't hold much hope of being able to get any sort of act together to be good enough to participate, but ended up with half a dozen willing performers, and we planned and practiced a version of YMCA by the Village People.
Yeah.
Well, you can imagine that they would put some enthusiasm into that. That'd be exciting. A colleague of mine, Harry, worked with pupils who were deemed gifted and talented in the music department, and he was as smug could be that his chosen performers were going to win the talent show because clearly they were more talented than anyone else. He already had a huge advantage over me as his cohort of young people were keen, well-behaved and talented, whereas mine were disruptive and distracted for the entirety of the school day. As the day of the talent show got nearer, I happened to be in the corridor by the music department looking for one of my pupils who had stormed out of a lesson. I could hear loud music and harmonious, tuneful singing coming from one of the classrooms, and I peeped in. And there was my colleague, Harry, with 6 pupils rehearsing their talent show entry. They had costumes. They had a routine and a specially recorded backing track. They were awesome. He already had a huge advantage over me, but was further hammering this advantage home by using lesson time to rehearse, the done thing, and using his music contacts to get a backing track made. It was very unfair, but I accepted that my pupils had no chance of winning, and it was the taking part that was important. My colleague, however, was still very smug and very confident of winning. So the day the talent show arrived, I was stood backstage with my pupils, waiting for our turn to perform, and at the side of me was the sound system being used for the music. My colleague, Harry, had placed his CD backing track on a table at the side, and he was distracted by something else. I leant against the table and it tilted, causing the slim and slippery CD to fall off the table and slide in slow motion down into a crack in the floorboards underneath the stage. It was actually gone forever because nobody could reach it. I couldn't believe it had happened. No one saw it happen apart from me. Did I cause it? I decided quickly I was making my excuses and I left the scene. I chose to say nothing. I watched Harry scour the area for the backing track, watched his gifted and talented pupils have an absolute meltdown as all their carefully rehearsed performances were made totally pointless as they now had no backing music. They didn't know what to do. They did a performance of sorts, but it wasn't what they'd practiced and it didn't go well. I would like to tell you, and if this was a movie, this is what would happen. I'd like to tell you that my pupils smashed it and won, but alas no. Given a microphone, a captive audience and an attitude, one of my performers decided that they were going to do a profanity-filled rap, which bore absolutely no resemblance to YMCA at all. They were escorted off the stage very quickly. The competition was actually won by 3 Year 7 girls doing the Macarena. Oh, Macarena. They were very happy. Gary was not. Abby says, I left the school the following year. I haven't seen him since. He never found out what had happened to his CD backing track down between the floorboards. I would like to say I've had many years of guilt about this episode, but that would be totally untrue. To be honest, I hadn't thought about it in years. Until in August this year, I had new next-door neighbours. I was chatting to the woman over the garden fence and I introduced myself. She stated that she thought she'd met me before, and after thinking about it said, oh my gosh, you were a teacher at my high school. We reminisced a little about her time at the school. She said, that school was brilliant. We had talent shows and everything. And then she added, we had a great music teacher who entered us into a talent show, but we lost our backing track, so we didn't win. She looked rather mad. I looked at her. I felt guilt and remorse and shame, a mixture of all of them maybe. I remained silent about it because what had happened all those years ago, 27 to be precise, has to stay hidden in the depths of history. So do I have to confess to her to get forgiveness, or will this confession on primetime radio suffice? I await your decision, says young Abby, who I think leant on the table. Look, there goes the CD. Is it between the floorboards? Yes, if I push it in hard enough. Sister Holly, the voice of the moral majority.
Yes, well, you see, the thing is, I would have been one of those music students, really. That would have been me. And I would have been really upset if, after all of that practicing, costumes, dance moves, singing, everything else, that they'd lost the backing track. That would have really upset me.
You'd have been gifted and talented, wouldn't you?
Yes,
you would.
Well.
Not for me to say, Simon.
Yes, I think we know which group you're in.
But I would have been really upset. And frankly, Abby, I think you're just jealous of Harry because Harry put in the effort. He sourced all the costumes. He sorted it out and made sure they were fantastic. So I think she's just jealous, and so that's why I'm not forgiving.
I don't know what group you'd be in.
Well, yes. Let's be very clear on this. These talent shows are supposed to be, the spirit of them is it's very on the hoof and they're not supposed to be very good. He's a music teacher and he's using the music time to be able to put on... If you're the music teacher, then the talent thing should be something that's not music. That's the whole point. Because then geography teacher is at a disadvantage because of music teacher getting a backing track. What's that about? And you've got costumes, just not on. So for that, definitely nothing to forgive, and all reasonable people will be in my corner.
Is that right? And all gifted and talented people will be in Laura's corner. People's verdict, please. Does Abby get your forgiveness? 61054 on the text. First word is Simon. However, just before the news, we had a confession from Abby about she was a teacher. There was a talent competition at school. She had challenging pupils. Harry had all the gifted and talented pupils, and a backing track CD, which then somehow disappeared down the floorboards. Think I know who's to blame. Anyway, the whole thing was wrecked, and it's probably Abby's fault. She's never stepped forward until now. Does she get forgiven?
So Andy from Wallasey says forgiven. Performance to a backing track created by professionals is cheating. End of. Leslie, though, says totally forgiven. I host our school talent show, and the unrehearsed ones are always the best. And Alex in Cambridgeshire says not forgiven. Only the kids who really cared about what they were doing lost out. Their smug teacher wasn't the one dying on stage. Abby probably shouldn't tell her neighbour, though. She may unleash terrible forces of dark vengeance fed by 27 years of bitterness.
Wow, that went into a strange
dark,
place.
Yeah.
If you have a confession for us, please send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Cassie, who sent in today's tale. Thank you, Cassie. Father Simon and honourable crew, I've been listening to the confessions on my commute back from work for quite a while now, and I've wanted to send mine in, but have held back for fear of repercussions. It's a burden I've been carrying since 1986, at the very start of my career. I'm a personal assistant, or a PA as it's commonly known, and I have the reputation of being ferociously efficient. I've worked for execs in a variety of industries and am known as the Rottweiler. Such is my determination to make sure things are delivered on time and nothing is missed. However, this was not always the case. At the tender age of 19, on a bright but chilly December morning in 1986, I found myself in the foyer of the Grabber Incorporated building on Park Avenue in New York, trying to work out which floor of this skyscraper my office was located on. My job was to work as the PA to a vice president of a well-known bank, a UK-owned investment bank. I was petrified and very homesick, and was literally quivering in my formal suit and smart court shoes, when a voice behind me said my name. It turned out it was my new boss, a Scottish middle-aged man called Michael. We then proceeded to take the elevator, as they call it, across the pond to the 19th floor, and he walked me to my desk and then left me whilst he made himself comfortable in his glass-fronted office. I sat on the other side so he could see everything I was doing and vice versa, and there he left me for a whole day. I realise now this is some kind of initiative test to see if I get on and do something proactively, but I obviously failed spectacularly, as, such was my fear and shyness, I couldn't move off my seat, and instead proceeded to sharpen pencils all day. On my second day, I thought it was a good idea to observe what the other PAs were doing in the open plan office, copy what they did. They were a frightening bunch, Father Simon. Brash New Yorkers with loud voices, big hair, long manicured nails, just like Sister Holly, running around in Reebok high tops and chewing gum. The PA next to me was a particularly scary individual called Leslie Marasco, who was obviously very pleased with her boss, because whenever he left the room, she shouted after him, "You sadist!"
What?
I cleaned that up a little bit.
Really?
On the third day, Michael, the boss from hell, instructed me that one of my duties was to empty the papers in his out tray. Straightforward enough, one might think, but no, it wasn't. I had no idea where to file these various documents, so I went to have a look at the corporate credit files in the Xerox room, where the photocopier and shredder were located. These files were massive and confusing. I didn't have a clue where to put this filing, and such was my nervous disposition, didn't feel I could ask my boss or the other PAs in the office for advice. So I devised a temporary workaround and decided to put the filing in the drawer of my desk, with the intention of sorting it out later, when things were more familiar. A good plan, you might think, but it had one flaw. After a few weeks or months in the office, my understanding of the corporate credit files had not improved at all, and the drawer in my desk had become so full of filing it had spread out to not one, not two, but 3 large filing cabinet drawers as well. To hide my ever-growing secret, I made sure to lock the various drawers before I left at the end of the day, and I hid the key in a suitably odd place so that no one would find it. So I'm about 3 months into my new job, and things are starting to become a little bit more enjoyable, and my boss unexpectedly, and very out of character, calls me into his office for a chat. Never a good sign. His opening line was, "So how's the filing going then?" Except he was Scottish. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, no, that's true.
Immediately, very loud warning bells started to ring in my head, and my stomach turned when I realised that I'd forgotten to lock the drawers when I left work the night before. I whimpered, okay, I think, a little behind, but catching up. After which he told me to follow him out to the filing cabinets and to pull everything out of them and put the contents on my desk. I wanted to die 1,000 deaths of embarrassment, as not only was my dark secret laid bare, but this was in front of the entire office with several of my colleagues looking on. The humiliation! Michael then told me with a mafia-style glint in his eye and menacing tone to his voice that he wanted the filing gone by the end of the day, and then strode back to his glass-fronted fishbowl of an office. I looked at the mountain of papers on my desk. Even if I did know where to put them, it would take me months. I had to find another solution, and quickly. The world of investment banking, Father Simon, as you probably know, is a very corporate and smartly dressed place to work. In those days, there was a dress code for ladies, which was a skirt, jacket, court shoes, and pantyhose. First confession I've ever had with the word pantyhose in.
Yes, it is.
Not the last, though. I'm so glad that I was wearing a jacket as it came to my rescue. You see, I hatched a plan to get rid of the filing, and that was wodge by wodge, a technical term, to hide it under my jacket and surreptitiously and with an air of nonchalance slink my way to the Xerox room, and when I was absolutely sure that I was alone, I put it all in the shredder. Every single page. It worked a treat because by the end of the day, and after about 30 of these clandestine trips to the shredder, the filing was very definitely gone. And I must admit to walking home in my new own Reebok high tops with an extra spring in my step. However, working on the rationale that no one had missed the filing for 3 months by this stage and didn't know what was in it, my plan was to deny if charged. Just didn't know that anything was missed at all. And when my boss the following day asked me if the filing was gone, I looked at him straight in the eyes and I said, of course it's definitely gone. He just didn't know that gone meant shredded. Shortly after this, the corporate gods must have been smiling on me as he was shipped to another branch in some far-flung, godforsaken part of the globe, and I was promoted to work for the senior vice president. And I've kept this dark secret hidden to this very, very day. Simon, after 37 years of carrying around this heavy burden of guilt, I would like to apologise to the investment bank in question, who are very well known, and to any of my former colleagues who might have spent hours searching for a memo, telex, fax or contract relating to a multi-million-pound dollar leveraged buyout. Whatever one of theirs is. I mean, that's me saying, I don't know what it is, but Cassie does. I'm very much hoping that you think my confession is worthy of understanding and maybe just a little bit of forgiveness. Well, we're going to find out now, I suspect. See, filing an organisation, Holly's very hot on this, and she'd have been very good. But would you have been very good on day one?
Well, I'm really, I think the thing is, Cassie, the fact that the other PAs were a bit nasty to you.
They were.
And I would have thought, oh, okay, well, as an adult, you'd be really, really nice. But no, they nicknamed you the Rottweiler, which makes me think that actually you're not a very nice person, Cassie, and you're just as nasty as those PAs were to you when you were younger. And that's not very good. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that people could have lost millions of pounds all because of your shredding because you couldn't be bothered to file it properly. Everything was on paper back then, I presume. I don't know. Wasn't there. And not on computers. So they lost all these pieces of paper. Millions of pounds lost. Not forgiving.
Everything
It was only the 80s. We were recording things on slate.
Brother from another country.
I'm going to forgive. Here's the thing. Why is she getting initiative tests when she's got... Have I got the job or not? This isn't the SAS. I don't need to do initiative tests to work out whether I should be doing your job or not. Also, you said get rid of the filing. Well, it's got rid of. If you needed it put somewhere else or recorded somewhere else, you should have said so, sunshine. And that's your initiative test failed and why you got shipped off to some other job and I got a promotion. So have some of that, sunshine. I definitely forgive them.
I think that kind of attitude would have gone down very well in this office back in the 80s. Is Cassie forgiven? Does she get the people's verdict? Please, on the text 61054, first word is silent. And just before the news, we had a confession from Cassie, a PA/Rottweiler at a big investment bank in New York. It was a filing issue, basically.
Yeah.
And she got rid of she couldn't work out how to do it. So she got 3 months worth of filing and she put it all through the shredder.
Yeah.
And now she's very successful. Anyway, she's carried it around for a long time. Does she get... She's got the smart speaker. Does she get forgiveness? Here it comes.
So Hannah in Sheffield says, forgiven. If the company couldn't be bothered to induct and train you properly, especially when there's such important paperwork, that's not your fault. It's the company's fault. Serves them right. But Gemma in Buckinghamshire says, can't forgive this. As a PA, I love organisation, and just hearing this story puts me on edge. Why on earth did she shred them? And Mitch says, definitely forgiven. Filing is incredibly boring.
Yes.
Also, I know someone who filed everything under M for Mr. or Mrs.
Really?
So that's basically everything.
Okay, that's very good. I suppose that kind of works.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you have a confession, maybe it's a filing confession, maybe it's an investment bank confession, maybe it's inspired a thought. Do you fancy a smart speaker? I mean, if you're in investment banking, you probably got your own smart speaker.
My guess is.
Anyway, we would like to see your tale. We'd like to swap it for the smart speaker. Send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.com. 5:47, it's confessions time. And don't forget, if you miss a confession on any day and you just want to catch up and relive the fun, I've forgotten, where do I go?
You can go to the Greatest Hits Radio app.
Yes.
And you'll find Simon Mayo's Daily Confession podcast.
That's what it's called. That's where you go. Who could forget that title?
No.
Me,
So
on a
catchy.
regular basis. So today's confession, judgment please on Susie. Not real name, but we're going to call her Susie. Father Simon and the Fabulous Collective. My confession dates back to the mid-80s, when I lived at home with my parents and my sister, who was a few years older. This is going to be one of those confessions where it depends where you are in the pecking order of your family as to whether you forgive or not. Whilst I was the definition of square and awkward, she was everything I was not. She was trendy, popular, pretty, and although her taste in men was often questionable,
Okay.
she had a string of boys eager to take her out. My parents often despaired at her wild ways, and that was until she met Colin, also not his real name.
Right.
Colin was a little older than she was. He had a good job, wore sensible clothes, no tattoos or piercings, because this being the 80s,
Yeah.
they were frowned on big time. At last my parents could breathe a sigh of relief as my sister seemed to calm under Colin's spell. Gone were the all-night parties and her wild ways. As Valentine's Day approached, I'm not saying my mother had actually bought a hat, but she was hopeful that they might settle down together. So when Colin turned up with a small Ratner's box, I need to pause here. Holly, Ratner's was a low-market jeweller.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
Like an H. Samuels or something.
Run by a guy called Gerald Ratner, who then spoiled his entire company by using a very rude word to describe everything that they made.
Okay, yeah.
We now carry on. A small Ratner's box looked like a jewel, and we all held our breath. Well, it turned out it wasn't a ring, but it was a pendant. He explained it was symbolic of their relationship. Gold was for love, and diamonds were forever.
Oh, they are, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, but a Ratner's pendant, gold and diamonds, was
Sure,
probably like
diamonds.
$3.95.
Yeah.
I have to say, Father Sam, my sister absolutely loved it. She wore it constantly, and I was as jealous as hell. She would not even let me try it on. However, I was the sensible one. If this nice, sensible boy called Colin, nice, sensible name, was making plans, they should be with me. I glossed over the fact that I was still at school, square, and had never had a boyfriend. So imagine my delight then, when I wandered into the bathroom one day, once my sister had gone to work, and spied the pendant on the shelf. She's forgotten to put it on. Ha, this is my chance to try it on. I picked it up and tried in vain to get the clasp done up. No matter, I thought I could hold it up to my neck and stand on tiptoe to see how it looked in the mirror above the sink. It was lovely.
No.
Until I readjusted my stance for a better look, and one end of the chain slipped from my fingers. All I could do was stand and watch in horror as the pendant ran down the free end of the chain, slipped off the end, hit the sink, bounced twice, and then vanished down the plug.
Oh, no.
I stood frozen to the spot, still holding the chain. What the heck was I supposed to do? What could I do? I could put the chain back and deny all knowledge, I could fess up. Of all the options, she goes for the worst. Then, in a moment of madness, I decided the only option was to stuff the chain down the plug as well and deny everything.
Deny everything, yeah.
Deny. It's at this point I want to blame the education system.
Of course, yeah.
Latin verbs, naming the reproductive organs of a flower, knowing the names of the inert gases, all did me no good at all. If instead I'd been taught the basics of plumbing, I would not have panicked and investigated the U-bend, and all would have been fine, but alas, no. My sister returned from work. Horror ensued when she discovered the pendant was missing. I denied ever seeing it. When Colin arrived, she explained she'd lost it. He said she'd been careless with it, and therefore clearly did not value his love as he thought she had. They broke up soon afterwards.
Wow.
Oh, no.
I seek forgiveness, not from Colin. He had a lucky escape and married a nice local girl.
It's your sister. Oh, my.
But from my parents, as my sister returned to her wild ways, questionable men, and even more questionable life decisions. But in my defence, if schools taught more practical subjects like plumbing, all could have been avoided. Regards, Susie. Not my real name. Okay, well, this is a shocker with real-life consequences. Who knows whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. Susie needs forgiveness. Does she get it from Sister Holly?
You can't just blame your school for something that you did. Susie and Colin could have ended up together. They could have, gone on forever and ever and lived happily ever after in a castle. But no, you ruined that because you were selfish and you tried on the necklace, even though she told you loads of times, no, I don't want you trying on my necklace because it's really, really precious to me. It's very upsetting that they didn't end up together, and that's why I'm not forgiving.
And who knows what happened to her sister?
Yeah.
Did she continue in her wild ways, brother from another?
Well, I'm going to think that it wasn't in the stars, really, was it, for Colin and Susie's sister? It wasn't in the stars. It wasn't fated to be, was it? Because at some
believe
point,
in fate or the stars?
The metaphorical pendant was going to be disappearing beyond the U-bend in that relationship, I think, and it all turned out fine, didn't it? Because Colin ends up with someone else, and Susie's sister ends up with a bunch of questionable men and having quite a lot of fun, thanks very much. So everyone did well, and then Susie probably ended up with someone who gave her a pendant as well. So quite a bit of assumptions being made on that one, but I'm going to say
poor parents.
Forgiven.
I'm saying poor parents. Imagine. Anyway, it turns out it's Susie's fault, but does she get your forgiveness? On the text, please, 61054. The first word is Simon. Is she forgiven? Does she get the people's verdict? 61054. First word is Simon. Anyway, does Susie get any forgiveness at all? Let's check in with the people's verdict.
So Rachel says, not forgiven for making her sister sad, even if she and Colin didn't last. But it was tat, and the best place for it was probably a drain. So she actually did her sister a favour. Emma says, forgiven as a middle sister with an older and younger sister who were both pretty, successful, and me with the face only a mother could love. I felt that me and Susie could have been twins. I'd have done the same with the pendant, though. And Richard in Leeds says, forgiven. I'm definitely forgiving, as I had a similar experience with my St. Christopher's cross that my girlfriend gave me when I was 14, although mine went down the gutter in the high streets. P.S. Is either of the two sisters single?
Okay, so I think lost jewellery or pendants and certainly sisters is a rich area. If you have a confession involving anything really and you think we might exchange it for a smart speaker, let us know. It's confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk.